Welcome back to the Response Drivers Podcast, where we feature top marketing minds and dig into their inspiring stories. Learn how these leaders think and find big ideas to push your results and sales to the next level. Now, let's get started.
Hello, I'm Rick Rapé, host of the Response Drivers Podcast. Here we dive deep with marketing executives, experts, and innovators to uncover how they approach targeted marketing and use data-driven strategies to acquire and retain customers. We'll talk about what's working, what's changing, and how we can stay ahead in an evolving marketing landscape. This episode is brought to you by RPM Direct Marketing. RPM helps companies develop hard-hitting direct mail creative and utilize advanced testing and targeting methodologies so you can fully optimize your marketing performance to drive more sales and exceed growth expectations. With a proven track record, RPM delivers smarter, more profitable direct mail solutions so you can turn your direct mail programs into a predictable, efficient sales channel. Visit rpmdm.com to learn more. Well, I'm really looking forward to learning from my guest today. But first, I want to give a quick thank you to Dr. Jeremy Wise of Rise 25, who introduced me to this gentleman. If you're interested in podcasting for business, Jeremy and his partner, John Corcoran, are the experts you need. Rise25.com for more info. Rick Cesari is a high-level direct-to-consumer D2C marketing strategist and consultant. He's also used direct response strategies plus video marketing to help build many iconic brands, products like the Juiceman, Sonicare, the George Foreman Grill, OxiClean, Clairsonic, Rug Doctor, the GoPro, Dormio, Theradome, Epsom It, and many others. His strategies have helped grow 4 companies from startups to over $1 billion in sales. These case studies are outlined in his book, Building Billion-Dollar Brands. And his latest book, The Wellness Business Blueprint, is for anyone in the wellness business that wants to build their business or grow their practice. Thank you so much for joining me today, Rick.
Hey, Rick, thank you. Thank you for the nice introduction. I'm really excited to be here. I love talking to people that are in the direct response business.
Well, thanks for coming. I have some questions for you based on your background. I thought it was very interesting as I was doing some research on your how you got your start, that you started out studying pre-med and you transitioned to becoming a marketing strategist. Can you tell me a little bit more about how that happened?
Well, you did do your research. A lot of people don't know that. I was actually my family was living in Daytona Beach, Florida. And my thought process was I was going to either be a marine biologist or a dentist because my best friend in high school wanted to be a dentist. So that's why I was taking biology and I actually have a degree in biology. But after graduating from college, I didn't feel like going on to graduate school, which I would have had to do with either one of those things. And so I went back down to Florida. My college was in Pennsylvania. I went back down to Florida. And much to my mother's horror, I became a bartender and a lifeguard. And so she thought, oh, my God, he just wasted his college education. And I did that for a year, but it really turned out interesting because it helped me in my career. Because part of my lifeguarding duties, I had to sell suntan lotion. And I actually learned how to sell to people one-on-one and overcome objections. And I talk about this in some of my books where I learned about how to increase an average order value. Instead of selling them one bottle of suntan lotion, you'd sell them a whole suntan lotion system. So instead of an $8 sale, it would grow to like an $80 sale. And really techniques that you would use sales-wise are still being used today in digital marketing and everything. So one thing is I definitely was able to learn from that experience, but it was kind of a fun job, but a dead end job. And so I started reading a lot of books about how people made money. And at the time, a lot of people became millionaires by investing in real estate. So I decided I was going to take a real estate seminar. And there was one down in Florida that was teaching how to buy distressed property or foreclosed property. I took the seminar, went out, did exactly what they said, bought a house, turned around and sold it in 2 weeks and made $12,000. And back then, this is like 1986, that was just out of college from someone that was a bartender lifeguard. It was like $1 million to me. And so I said, wow, I'm gonna do this. And I started doing it a little bit more. But I also, for whatever reason, the guy that taught the seminar, I called up a business magazine in Florida called Florida Trend and told them about this story of this guy. And they wrote a magazine story in a popular business magazine about him, and it helped his seminar business. So he called me up and asked me if I wanted to help him with marketing, and that's how my marketing career got started. I started promoting real estate seminars.
Wow, that's super interesting.
Yeah.
That's so crazy because in the late 80s, I also got a job and I was doing door-to-door sales in college.
Mhm.
And I think that was a great training ground for direct marketing. It was wonderful because you just get an attempt after an attempt to, figure out how do I connect and sell with this product with people. So I learned a lot by sticking my foot in people's door and giving
Yeah.
them a
You
spiel.
learn to say, well, overcome objections,
Yeah.
solve problems, problem solving, what to say
Yes.
to get the people interested. I mean, there's a lot of things that definitely correlate to the work we do now.
Yeah.
So what's really interesting, and just taking it a step further, the way we were promoting the real estate seminars, which I'm telling this because it impacts what I do today. We
Mm.
started placing newspaper ads to get people to come to these free seminars, where then we would do a sales pitch for them to sign
Sure.
up for a paid course. And
Hmm.
basically, the newspaper ads, I'm going to make up the number, but you'd spend $1,000 on an ad, and if you could get 100 people to show up, we used to say, well, that cost us $10 a head to get people in the room, and then you would have to do a certain closing percentage, and it's
Sure.
all the same, basically arithmetic and
Hmm.
formulas that you use in digital marketing. You probably use them in direct mail, similar formulas, but you
Absolutely. Yeah.
learned it with a different sales platform. Uh,
Right.
yeah,
Cost per
so
sale.
that's
You have
how
to
I
be able
cut
to
I
figure out your
cut my
cost per
teeth.
sale.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's how I cut my teeth on direct response marketing, was promoting these real estate seminars all over the country, using newspaper ads. And
That's amazing.
yeah, this was the late '80s, and the most successful real estate seminars, there was one in the country called Nothing Down by a guy named Robert Allen. And he was one of the first ones that started to use TV to
Ooh.
promote the real estate seminars. And so TV was being like 10 times more effective than running a newspaper ad. And so we transitioned what we were doing into TV, and that's how I learned to make my very first direct response ads or infomercials back in the day, was
Wow.
through that. Yeah.
I bet I watched 100 or thousands probably of your TV ads back then in the day. I remember those. I
Oh
remember
yeah,
some of
they were
those
running
ads.
all the time,
They were
type of
running
thing.
it. Yeah, for sure.
Hmm.
Well, the next thing that I found on your biography was that you co-founded Trillium Health, and I think that was perhaps with your brother. Does that sound right?
Yeah. So actually,
Or
I
maybe
was,
not.
yeah, that was true. I was
Oh.
into health, because my dad passed away. We had 8 kids growing up in our family. My dad passed away when he was 46. I was only 12 years old, and he died of a heart attack. And it was mostly from lifestyle. Ate a lot of red meat, smoked 2 packs of cigarettes a day, high stress,
Mm.
all those things. So I was always very aware of health. And one of the things I did was drink a lot of freshly made juices. And
Mm.
um, I basically would be making it all the time, and I forget, the juicer at the time was something called a Norwalk. It weighed like 100 pounds and very expensive, hard to use. And I said, boy, there's got to be an easier way to do this. And I was out there again. I went to another seminar. I read about it in the newspaper. There was this guy doing a lecture called Jay Kordich, the Juiceman. And I couldn't make it to the seminar, but it turned out he was doing a home show in Seattle, Washington. And I went down to the home show that weekend, and it wasn't very crowded, but one booth had like 100 people around it. It was like the busiest booth there. And there was the Jay Kordich, who was known as the Juice Man at the time, pitching his juicers. And I said, wow, I have to do something on TV with this guy because he's mesmerizing. And so you mentioned Trillium Health Products. That company actually started out, we were talking about branding earlier. That company started out as JM Marketing, Juiceman Marketing, and then it evolved
Oh,
into
wow.
Trillium Health Products as a
Wow.
more of a better brand. But anyway, we that company just had amazing growth. You know, the marketing was one of the reasons, you know, television marketing back in the late 80s, early 90s, it was like you know, Facebook and Meta was when they first came out, that just you
Mhm.
got fantastic returns on the dollars
Mhm.
you spent. Anyway, the company grew from 0 to 75 million in about 3.5 years. And we ended up selling it in 1993. But we created the Juiceman juicer and the Breadman bread machine. And the company that bought us, Sultan Housewares, was a housewares company in Chicago, and they bought those two brands was the main value there.
Wow. Wow. Well, as I was mentioning a little bit before we started recording today, I have an original Juiceman juicer in my cupboard from
Yeah.
1989. I think my mom had it before I had it, and she gifted it to me. And so it's a hand-me-down, but we still use it and we love it. So
Oh,
the
that's
only thing
awesome.
I think we need to figure out how to get spare parts for it because it might have a couple of cracks,
Yeah.
but it still is heavily in use, I promise.
You'll have to bring that when we get together for lunch because that's like a collector's item that I haven't
Oh,
seen one of those in a long time. Yeah.
okay. All right. Well, it's for sale for a small fortune if you want to buy it.
Okay. I'll take you up on that.
Now it's a collector's item. It's worth its value is going way back up, maybe. Um, well, you've built other iconic brands besides the Juice Man and the Bread Man. You've built brands like Sonicare and GoPro. What are some of the key elements that contribute to transforming a startup into a billion-dollar brand? I mean, that's kind of a big question, but maybe you can get into some of the basics for us.
Yeah, I'm gonna continue with the story. So,
Oh,
or
sorry. Yeah.
no, no, it'll answer your question too. Uh,
Okay.
so Sultan Housewares purchased our company, Trillium Health Products, and then a former partner at Trillium Health Products called me and said, "Hey, there's this small company over in Bellevue. They need some help marketing. Would you mind speaking with them?" And I went over and met with them, and it turned out it was Optiva Corporation, and that Optiva is the makers of the Sonic toothbrush, and they had this newfangled invention that really, really worked well, but they didn't know how to market it. They couldn't get it out in the marketplace because normal toothbrushes at the time cost, you know, $2 for a toothbrush. And I think there was an electric one out there that cost like $25. And here was a $150 toothbrush. And the reason it was expensive because it had sonic technology, but people didn't understand what that was. So why would I spend $150? So they couldn't do any retail distribution. Well, it turns out a 30-minute television infomercial was the perfect vehicle for them. And because we were used that time to educate the consumer. So when you
Hmm.
talk about one of the ways where we take products that are kind of unknown, as long as they're good products, we spend a lot of time through our advertising educating the consumer about the benefits to them and the problems that those products will solve or problem that the product will solve. Well, with the
Hmm.
Sonicare toothbrush, basically, you know, anyone suffering from periodontal disease or wanting whiter, this was a better product to do it. We just had to explain to people why. And through our advertising, we were able to do that. And again, that was another company that had phenomenal growth. I think Oprah was one of Oprah's favorite products. She talked about it, and then they were number one on the Inc. list of 500 fastest growing companies. And
Hmm.
yeah, and so basically, what I try to do to go back and answer the question you asked, what I try to do in my advertising is you heard the terms features tell and benefits sell, and so a lot of people when they try to market products, they talk about features. Oh, look at the
Hmm.
size of the motor and look at this. And I always take that and turn around. and do the benefits. And a really good example of that is going back to the juicer, where the competition to our Juiceman juice machine at the time was Krups and Braun's, two big German engineering companies, big budgets, but they were selling it as a kitchen appliance. And they said, look how sharp our blade are, German stainless steel, German motor, very powerful. And we took our juice machine and said, well, if you drink this juice, you can lower your cholesterol, and you drink this juice and it'll help relieve arthritis pain. So we
Yeah.
were basically communicating the
Became a
benefit
health
of
product,
juice.
really.
Yeah, exactly. And so people would buy the juice machine. Same thing with the Sonicare toothbrush.
Yeah.
You can reverse gum disease. Why go to the dentist and have a real expensive dental bill and bad teeth when the Sonicare can fix that problem for you? And we explained how the technology would do that.
Hmm.
And so that's something, kind of a theme I've done throughout my career with many of these different products, is really focusing on what problem the product solved and what was the benefit to the end consumer, and then trying
Hmm.
to create that message in the advertising that we did.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I mean, we're comparing and contrasting sometimes our direct mail programs against digital programs and or
Mhm.
digital marketing these days. And so much of digital marketing seems to be just very short, bite-sized little, almost billboards or headlines.
Yeah.
And one of the things we love about direct mail is that we can go longer form and tell a story and talk to someone one-on-one and have built in emotions and but also rational justifications and things like that. So it's longer form marketing is great, but it seems like it's kind of a lost art.
Yeah, and they the longer, and you've experienced this with your direct mail, at least what I found in my, the longer you have to talk with somebody, the better conversion, return on investment you can get with that information. And so
Hmm.
people always ask me, like, we still do TV for some clients. You mentioned a few at the end that aren't national brands yet, like Dormeo and Epsonet. Those are I threw those in there because they're kind of new clients that you'll hear about soon. Um,
Oh.
and yeah, we're still doing TV. I'll talk about where TV fits in the marketing program for people. It used to be you could lead with that. Now it's more of a phase two type of thing. But anyway, yeah, and
Hmm.
on TV, it's like you can do a 30-second ad, a 1 minute ad, a 2 minute ad, a 5 minute ad, or a 30-minute ad. And the longer you
Hmm.
have to tell the story, the more better the conversion rates usually are. But
Yeah.
sometimes you have to adapt the product, the advertising to the platform you're on, so your hands are tied a little bit.
Yeah, I feel like there's been a few products in my long career that needed a 30-minute ad to
Hmm.
explain to people and educate people on what the benefit was and what
Yeah,
but they never wanted to, do that. And so it
right.
became hard to sell on a short form
Yes.
because people just didn't get it right off the bat.
Yeah. And the thing is, people say, well, it has to be really quick, and people don't have the attention span. I think you have to have a little bit of a hook to catch their attention. But if it's a person that has a problem that your product's going to solve, that one person, maybe it's one person out of 10, one person out of 100, they're going to stay
Hmm.
and learn as much as they can if it's interesting and it's solving their problem. And so
Sure.
while longer format 100% isn't going to appeal to everybody, no product is going to appeal to everybody. But for the people that are interested and you're solving their problem, they'll stay and read the longer copy or watch the longer video to get the answer to their problems.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And boy, I sure just in my mind, I remember all those pitchmen from the home shows and
Oh yeah,
that I used to go
down at
to,
the
or
Puyallup
the
Fair.
Puyallup Fair.
Yeah,
Those types of people, they could suck you in and make you watch a 30-minute presentation about pots and pans. And you're like, well, why am I standing here? I have no idea, but I want to buy this. It's
yeah.
insane. But Let's see. Can you share another story from your career? I'm interested in your experience with George Foreman and the George Foreman Grill. I mean, I know that was one of the
Sure.
early
Yeah.
products that you worked on, and what an iconic brand that became.
Yeah. It's April 14th, 2025. I think George passed away a little over 2 weeks ago.
Mm,
I don't know if you had heard that.
I
Anyway,
did, yeah. Rest in
yeah,
peace,
it was
George.
sad thing. And I did that whole week. I posted some really interesting stories of working with him over the years on LinkedIn, and they got a lot of good response. But anyway,
Wow.
we that company that bought our Trillium Health products, Salt and Housewares, they came to me. Part of the reason they bought our company was not only to buy the brand Juiceman and Breadman, but also they wanted to learn how to do the marketing that we were doing, the television marketing, because they saw the
Mm,
effect that the television had on retail sales. So they came to me and said, we have two products. One was a homemade bagel maker, and the other one was this grill, this slanted grill. And basically, we made commercials for both of them, but the bagel maker didn't work. But the slanted grill turned out to be the George Foreman Grill. And just a quick story about that. That originally was called the Fajita Express. And the reason that it was slanted was that the idea was you'd cook ground meat on it, and then you'd put your at the edge of the table, and you'd scrape the meat off the grill into your taco shell. Needless to say, that product didn't sell. So this is back in 1995, I think, and George had just won the heavyweight championship for the second time. He was the oldest person ever to do that, 46 years old. And he
wow.
was looking, his agent was, they were looking for products to market. And somehow there was a connection between the agent and the head of Sultan. And he remembered about this grill they had. And back at this time, George was kind of pretty heavy, and he was famous for eating hamburgers and things. So they said, well, "Why don't we try to fix George up with this grill?" And yeah, I know we were talking before the podcast started. We shot his very first infomercial in 1996 at a production studio in Seattle, Washington. And George flew up here. He had one person with him, nicest guy in the world, really quiet. In the last 10 years before doing this infomercial, every Friday he would teach a sermon he was a preacher down in Houston, and a family man, and aside from being a boxer. So he's had really good values, really nice person. And he came up onto the set, and we had him all fixed up in a boxing robe and boxing gloves, and we wanted to try to leverage his fame from boxing. And we even reached out to HBO and bought like 15 seconds of footage from them, of him knocking out Michael Moorer, who he won the heavyweight championship. So we put together this really nice infomercial with the boxing footage in the front, and it was a total disaster. No sales. And
Wow.
we go
Okay.
back and we're thinking, like, what happened? And it turns out a little bit later he was at a gourmet show in San Francisco, and the response was amazing, and everybody, uh, it was primarily like 85-90% women would come up, and they'd want to see about the grill. So it turns out, if you think about it, most women don't like boxing, and we were starting our
Mm,
commercial with boxing footage. So immediately, if
mhm.
they're watching TV, they're going to tune out of that. So we went back to the edit room, removed the boxing footage, and basically made it more about cooking and that type of thing. And then the show turned around, and it turned out to be, over the years, we did many variations, but one of the most successful infomercial campaigns of all time. And this day, they sold like 120 million George Foreman grills.
Wow. Yeah, I think I've had several in my household alone. I mean, we
Yeah, I still have
we
one.
we tend to go through them, and once they break, we have to go out and buy another one because they're such a it's a standard item now in my
Yeah,
household, in my kitchen. I mean, I wouldn't know what to do without it.
yeah.
Um,
Another funny story about that is George was on QVC, and the host would be cooking. They had like five grills set up, and the host would be talking about the grill and all, and the slanted, and it can cook four hamburgers. And as he was talking, George would start eating. And it turned
Hmm.
out that every time George would take a bite of food, the phones would start ringing off the hook. And so that was like consistently something that happened. So then in every future commercial that we made, we always tried to show George eating as much as possible. For whatever reason, people responded to that. You talk about doing focus group studies and things like that. This was getting results in
Yeah.
real time, through direct response type of thing. It
So
really is.
that's interesting. I was going to ask you a couple process questions because I was curious about A/B testing. Did you guys do a lot of A/B testing of like version A versus version B, or was it more like you would try something and see if it worked, and then if it didn't, you would go back to the
Yeah, we
drawing
we
board?
did the latter, and I always talk about and I know that it can A/B testing is a really valuable tool. With
Hmm.
TV, we didn't really do that. We basically put together, I would say it's like part science and part art. It's like
Hmm.
from all your experience, what do you think's going to work? You do a media test, you get the results. Hey, I think that needs to do better. You change the offer, using your gut, using responses that you get, trying to listen to the people that called in on the phone, the telemarketing people, what they're saying.
Hmm.
And then you change it and you test it again. And back in the day, it's a very expensive process because you're re-editing TV shows, buying media time.
Right.
But if you could make one that worked, got it to work, the result was worth it. You could basically, that's how all these brands were able to grow very quickly through that type of marketing. But no, it didn't. We never really did A/B testing, but we did I don't know what it's called, where you test one and the next, and just keep evolving till you get something that works.
Well, it's sort of iterative version of testing. I
Yes,
mean, we
yes,
we do both of those things in direct mail sometimes, depending on the situation and the budget and what's possible
yeah.
and the size of the market and all those things. Um, wow, that is so interesting. Let me ask you a couple more questions because we're running out of time, and I feel like I could talk to you for hours probably,
I'd have
but
to do part one and part two.
maybe. Oh, there's an idea. Um, I want to ask you a quick question about advice. Sort of, what advice would you give to someone today looking to break into the direct response marketing field?
Yeah,
I know that
that's a
there's a
great.
lot more direct marketing people out there, but
Yeah, that's a great question. And you know how we were talking, and you've experienced it in your career and my career, where okay, we started your with newspaper ads and direct mail and things. If you mentioned it to people, they might think, well, those things are old-fashioned ways of marketing. The point I'm trying to make is people have been marketing to other people for over 100 years. You can go back to the Montgomery Ward, Sears catalog,
sure,
whatever.
sure,
There's been,
yeah.
and you know this being a direct mail person, some of the really famous direct mail copywriters from long time ago. Um, they're basically there's principles that work when it comes to marketing because they're based on, to me, human psychology. And that doesn't really change. So now the marketing vehicle changes. Okay. Our platforms, I was talking about running newspaper ads, and now we run ads on Meta, and now we're doing TikTok videos instead of television videos. But the basic things that make people respond, to
Hmm.
me, haven't changed that much. And if you can learn what those are, then you're going to be successful. So, how do you learn what they are? Well, I always also think that they're very little, relatively new ideas. So, if you go back and read some of the books from uh, people that have been successful at marketing, and a couple of mentors of mine, or Dan Kennedy, I don't know if you know Dan Kennedy and the No BS marketing books. That was one of the very
Absolutely.
first books
Yeah.
I read. Robert Cialdini, the book Influence he wrote. Anyway,
I
there's
love
some,
that book.
and then I don't know if you ever read Breakthrough Advertising, one of the best books about copywriting, and that was back from written, I think, in the 40s or the 50s. Anyway, my point is to answer your
Yeah,
question.
excellent.
Yeah, read as many, if you're interested in direct marketing, read as many books as you can from people that have been successful at doing that. And I guarantee you, you'll learn a lot that will translate to whatever type of marketing that you're doing today. So that would be my advice to someone. And then if you're trying to break into the thing, I would say similar to what you and I have done, work for a company that has done direct marketing or doing direct marketing or doing direct response marketing or a digital response agency and learn from the people that are there. And then when you're ready and you feel like that you can do it, you might want to go out and start your own agency. So that would be how I would
Mhm.
approach it today.
Yeah, that's what I did. I took a lot of advice from all the people, all the agency owners that I ever worked for. I would
Yeah.
ask them how they got started and what they learned and what they would do again and what they wouldn't do again. And I took it all and rolled it into my own company when I
Now you
started.
have a successful agency.
Well, I hope so. I hope so. Um, well, boy, this has been a pleasure, and I feel like I'm gonna have to cut it short, but I really like the idea of a part two. So we're gonna come back, and I'm gonna definitely hit you up for a part
Yeah,
two
I still got to tell
interview.
you about the GoPro campaign and
Oh my gosh.
a great one. So we got lots to talk about still.
Yes, absolutely. So I will let's put a pin in it and save it for round two. I think that's exciting. Gives
Mhm.
gives our listeners something to look forward to.
Yeah.
One more quick question, which is the last question I'll ask you before I wrap up, and that is if you could go back and give your younger self one piece of advice, what advice would that be?
That's a great question. Uh, I, I'm kind of stumbling around because I don't know if it's like there's so many pieces of advice that would have helped me. And this
Mm,
is going to sound really strange to you. I've always been really good on the creative side,
mm,
and I ignored the business side. And
mm,
just this is me personally. You asked about one piece of advice for myself
mm-hmm,
was
mm-hmm,
to do more. Um, it's right brain, left brain type of thing. More
mm-hmm.
emphasis on the business of running businesses and not just the marketing,
Oh,
because
interesting.
I felt like that would have really helped me personally in my career. And my
Mm-hmm.
focus was always on how do I get more people in the door? How do I get more people to respond? How do I do and not really paying attention to the business side of things, which I've since spent a lot of time learning and understanding, and the
Mm-hmm.
operations side of it. And so
Yeah.
you need both to be if you're going to be a successful entrepreneur. You need both of those. And for me personally, I didn't spend enough time doing that. So that would be
Yeah.
my advice is to make sure you have a good focus, not just on the marketing and the direct response, but the business operations side.
That's really great advice. I mean, I think that's something that definitely resonates with me as well because, I'm a practitioner and a marketing expert who hung a shingle and started an agency where I could
Mhm.
work hands-on my clients' problems and on their marketing and I didn't really know very much about how to run a business and I've learned
Yes.
the
Then you
hard
learn the
way
hard way, and those
through
are
trial
usually
and error.
expensive. Yeah, expensive. Hopefully not expensive mistakes, but they are expensive sometimes.
Well, I think it's a hard way to learn and there's
Yeah.
definitely got to be easier ways to learn. All right. Well, thanks for your time. I think we'll wrap up with this and we'll save the rest for round two. Uh, we've been talking today with Rick Cesari. Rick is a pioneer in the direct response TV industry since 1985. He's an
Mhm.
infomercial producer and a master of video persuasion. He's an iconic brand builder, having helped grow 4 companies from startups to over $1 billion in sales. And he's also an author, and you should check out his book, Building Billion-Dollar Brands. And for anyone in the wellness business that wants to build their business or grow their practice, The Wellness Business Blueprint is his latest book. When is that book coming out, Rick?
Oh, it's out now, and you can buy any of the books on Amazon. So if you just Google my name on Amazon or search my name on Amazon, those books will come up.
Oh, that's wonderful. All right.
And I just
Thank you.
want to offer your listeners one thing, because I always do this when I'm on a podcast. If you have any question about marketing or business, I'm happy to help out, and you can just email me. It's rick@rickcesari.com, and you can probably put that in the notes or something for people.
I certainly will. It'll be in the transcript, and I'll make sure that gets out there. Well, thank you so much for this opportunity to learn from you today, Rick. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's a wrap for this episode of Response Drivers. Thanks for tuning in. If you found today's insights valuable, make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're enjoying the show, we'd love it if you left a review. Got a question or a topic you'd like us to cover? Just drop us a message at responsdrivers@rpmdm.com. Until next time, keep driving response and making your marketing work smarter.